I'm so tired. What's for dinner? He asked with a deliberately cheerful voice. He must be really holding a grudge about earlier. His eyes weren't smiling at all. These past few years, David has been truly awful. He pushed all the housework and childcare onto me, yet he thinks he's the most important. I naturally ignored David. There's no point in responding when I can't even recognize him as a person anymore. David, who did the unthinkable and betrayed me even though we have a child. I just couldn't forgive him. Come on, it's Sunday, there's no work. You're cheating on me, aren't you? The next day, I couldn't hold back anymore and said, I'll say the same to you. I have nothing to talk to you about. Just leave me alone. I left for work without looking back. Brace yourself. You betrayed us and made us miserable, now you'll see hell. My name is Karen Thompson, a 37-year-old part-time administrative assistant. I married David 16 years ago when I was 21. I started working right after high school at 18 and met David, who worked at a trading company we dealt with. David is older than me and is now 40. He's still working at the same trading company and has a responsible position as a department manager. We started dating when I was 19 and he was 22. We had the same hobbies and shared values, so after dating for 2 years, we got married. The following year, our son Ryan was born, and it's been 15 years since. Ryan is a kind and spirited kid who's about to start his high school. We were a normal family of 3, but then I noticed a small change. The button on David's suit that was coming off until recently was now neatly sewn on. David doesn't sew, and he would usually ask me for such things. I had no idea at the time that such a small discovery would later lead to a major situation. One day, I casually asked David about the suit button. Hey, this button. I thought it was coming off the other day, did you fix it yourself? David's hand, holding a beer can, stopped suddenly, and an awkward silence followed. David then sighed and said with an annoyed look, I had an important business meeting and noticed it then. It would have looked bad, so one of my coworkers, who likes sewing, fixed it for me. He then continued drinking his beer and started watching TV. It was clearly signaling he didn't want to talk further. Lately, I think David has become cold towards me. We used to be a close family until Ryan was in elementary school, but things changed after he started attending a private middle school. David insists on Ryan preparing for a prestigious private high school. Without any sports or activities after school, just studying. I was concerned whether Ryan truly wanted that or if the studies were becoming a burden to him, so I once voiced my opinion. Aren't you just imposing what you want on Ryan, our son? David exploded, saying, You, with your high school education, wouldn't understand. You think women can get by just being charming, even if they're dropouts. You've been living off me, like a parasite. You have no right to criticize me. I was speechless. David, who used to shine so brightly in his prestigious university and major trading company. I used to think it was a miracle that I could even be in a relationship with David, and I truly believed that he was with me because he loved me. Now it seemed like he was just looking for a convenient woman. Since Ryan's birth 15 years ago, there was no trace left of the David I first met. After quitting my job due to pregnancy and childbirth, David left all the housework and childcare to me, and even when I returned to work part-time, he never helped, insisting that the one who earns less should do more at home. Despite this, thanks to David's earnings, I've been able to save most of my part-time income and afford Ryan's private middle school. I didn't have the right to complain. Once that thought settled in my mind, I couldn't think of anything else. Then, one late December day, Ryan, as usual, was busy studying from morning to evening for his exams. I grew up in the countryside, so I always thought of private middle schools as places where rich students commute by train. In my hometown, it was more common to choose public high schools, and about 80% of my classmates went to public schools. I was worried that Ryan might be feeling suffocated, so I suggested he take a break, but he always responded, Mom, don't worry. I'm gonna work hard and get into a good company to make your life easier. It was a sweet thing to say, but I couldn't help worrying if it was right to tie a child, who should be out playing, to constant studying. Still, since Ryan said it was okay, I decided to just watch over him. But unbeknownst to me, our family ties were getting more and more tangled, reaching an irretrievable point. On this day, Ryan was studying in his room as his school was closed. Normally, I would relax in the living room or go to work if I had a shift. But I had the day off, and it was snowing, which is rare in our area, so I decided to go for a walk for a change of pace. I'm not one for the cold, so I usually don't go out in winter unless necessary. But I felt like I'd put on some weight from staying home so much, so I bundled up and went for a walk. Little did I know that this walk would lead me to discover the tangled mess. Walking outside at a time I usually wouldn't, I felt refreshed and remembered a young coworker mentioning a popular pancake shop nearby. I used to frequent new shops when I was younger, but now, I can't handle sweet things as much. However, I felt good that day and heard they offered takeout, so I decided to get some pancakes for Ryan. That's when I saw it. In my line of sight, while choosing my takeout, I saw David, my husband, sharing pancakes with a familiar woman. They didn't notice me and were happily chatting and eating. David was gently feeding the pancakes to the woman, my sister. I felt chills, quickly paid, and hurried out. Trying to calm my shallow breathing, I processed what I had just seen. It was undoubtedly David, my husband, on a date with my sister. Why those two? What about David's work? What was their relationship? These thoughts swirled in my head, causing a headache, but for now, I decided to go home and give Ryan the pancakes. Walking through the snowy white streets, I exhaled white breaths. Hours later, David came home as if nothing happened. A complete contrast to the person I saw at the pancake shop, now showing a deep frown and full-on grumpiness. Welcome back. Something wrong? I asked cautiously. David roughly took off his suit, throwing his bag around, then pointed at the dining table, saying, "Why pumpkin gratin today of all days? This sweet stuff isn't dinner. Make something salty now or go buy it." Frustrated, he stormed off to the bathroom. He had his phone with him, an unusual behavior. Maybe he was angry about the pumpkin gratin because he had just eaten pancakes covered in whipped cream with my sister during the day. Knowing what I had seen, I could guess why David was angry, but if I hadn't known, I'd surely be confused. And blame myself for being a bad wife, unable to please my husband. But as I listened to David showering, I thought something. Why do I have to be treated so horribly? For 15 years since Ryan's birth, even during my time as a homemaker, I was confident I balanced housework, childcare, and work. Ryan grew into a kind and straightforward kid, though he had his rebellious moments. What did I do wrong? What drove David to cheat? These thoughts started to consume me, and I gradually found it impossible to see David as a person. When David came out of the bathroom, his face was obscured by a dark cloud in my eyes. Why did I devote myself to such a worthless person? I thought, and a strange laugh bubbled up. Seeing this, David looked at me oddly and said, "What's with that creepy smile? If you've got time for that, go make dinner. You're useless." Hearing the commotion, Ryan came down from upstairs, worried. "Dad, Mom, what's going on?" Before I could say anything, David spoke. "Ryan, you'd rather have something like fried chicken than this sweet stuff, right?" Ryan furrowed his brow and said, "Well, I'm okay with anything. I'm just grateful that Mom cooked for me, defending me." At his words, David's eyebrows twitched, and he seemed about to say something, but I stopped him. "I'm sorry for being a useless mom. Ryan, just wait a bit. I'll make something else." Ryan said there was no need for that and tried to stop me. He might think I've lost my mind, but let me be clear. I am perfectly calm. And I've finally woken up to reality. David doesn't care about me. He's mistaken me for some convenient housekeeper. Well, I have my thoughts too. So, I made a sweet stir-fried beef with the leftovers in the fridge. David and Ryan looked stunned at the meal, and David, predictably, complained. "Hey, are you kidding me? Or are you just disrespecting me? Cut it out." Normally, I would have immediately apologized at his words, but from this moment on, I decided to change how I treated him. Ignoring David, I turned to Ryan and said, "Ryan, you've always liked sweet things, right? I know you've been eating spicy stir-fried beef to please your dad, but I knew you preferred sweet." Ryan's eyes widened and he said, "That's true, but..." Then he quietly finished his plate of stir-fried beef and, as an afterthought, the pumpkin gratin as well. Watching him, I said, "You still have more studying to do, right? Just do your best without overdoing it," and stood up. Leaving a bewildered David, I headed to the bathroom. After my bath, David was standing there waiting for me. Ignoring him, I sat on the sofa, started catching up on a drama I recorded. But David stopped me, asking in a mockingly bright tone, "I'm so tired. What's for dinner?" Clearly still holding a grudge about earlier. His eyes weren't smiling at all. I, of course, ignored him. There was no point in responding to someone I couldn't recognize as a person anymore. David seemed to glare at me angrily, saying, "You have the guts to ignore me?" I couldn't see his expression clearly through the black haze over his face. I sighed exaggeratedly, snatched back and turned on the TV without a word. Eventually, he unplugged it, so I couldn't watch. So, I moved to my room to watch TV shows on an app on my smartphone. David followed, saying something, but I completely ignored him. He became increasingly annoying, so I decided to sleep on the sofa for the night. The next day, I woke up to a nice smell and saw Ryan cooking breakfast in the kitchen. As I sat up, the blanket fell off me. Ryan noticed and turned to me with a smile. "Mom, you'll catch a cold sleeping there. You always tell me that, but it's okay for you, huh? Just wait a bit longer, breakfast will be ready soon." Without being taught, Ryan efficiently cooked and set 2 plates on the table. We said grace and enjoyed a leisurely breakfast together, which I appreciated. After eating, Ryan quickly left for a library. As I got up to clean up, David, who had just woken up, stared at me. "Huh? Why is there no breakfast for me? You've been acting strange since yesterday." He said something like that, but I ignored him, watching videos on a streaming site while washing the dishes and getting ready for work. David seemed to be saying something the whole time. But of course, I ignored him. Leaving the house, I turned off the lights and TV, regardless of David being there. Just as I was about to leave, David ran towards me, looking unusually flustered, and said, "It's Sunday, there's no work today. Is Ryan at the library? Leaving me alone on a day off, where are you going? Are you cheating?" I couldn't hold back anymore and said, "I'll say the same to you. I have nothing to talk to you about. Just leave me alone." I left for work without looking back. True, I usually have Sundays off, but it's busy around the end of the year. A coworker fell ill, so I filled in for them, preferring to earn money at work rather than stay at home. After finishing my half-day shift, I returned home to find a dispirited David watching TV on the sofa. I said, "Oh, did I forget to turn off the TV? Silly me. We need to save electricity," and turned it off. David woke up with a start and complained, but I ignored him. While tidying up and pondering what to make for dinner, I prepared meals for 2, matching Ryan's return in the evening. Of course, it was just for me and Ryan. No one else. Ryan didn't question anything, ate dinner, took a shower, and quickly retreated to his room. David couldn't stand this unusual change, but revealing everything now seemed premature. I felt like letting him stew a bit longer might be appropriate. After all, he'd been arrogantly mistreating me for years, and I didn't want to end it so easily. After living like he didn't exist for a few days, David finally broke down. "Please, Karen. Stop this. I realize I've done many things wrong. I've pushed household responsibilities onto you and complained a lot, right? I apologize, please cheer up." David's apology, in a voice as small as a mosquito's, seemed nothing short of ridiculous. I could have easily thrown all my feelings at him while laughing, but I decided to keep him on edge. His apology seemed insincere, as if he didn't truly understand why Ryan and I were ignoring him, trying to brush things over with a simple sorry. I remained unforgiving, consistent in my attitude. After about a month of this, David seemed worn out and vanished without returning home. Neither Ryan nor I were worried. After all, David lost his parents early and had a bad relationship with his grandparents. That left my sister, his affair partner, as his only refuge. By mid-January, Ryan's exam preparation was at a crucial stage. And I wanted to settle things before his exams. I'd been secretly tracking David's movements. And the time had finally come to confront them. I headed to my sister's apartment. Unsurprisingly, David's car was parked. When I knocked at the door, my sister came out, surprised, and exclaimed, "Karen? What are you doing here without notice? It's unusual for you." Ignoring my slightly flustered sister, I shouted towards the back room. "David, enough with the sneaking around. My being here says it all. David then appeared from the back. And he realized there was no escape and began apologizing. When he looked up, the black haze around him finally cleared, revealing his pale face.
Karen, forgive me. I never thought you'd hate me this much. I was scared and fled here.
I had no interest in his excuses. As I tried to proceed, my sister, wearing a wry smile, interrupted. Calm down, Karen. David lost his parents and came to me, his sister-in-law, for help. You must have been hurt too, unable to have more children after your surgery, right? David was desperate back then. I know. Ryan's going through a tough time with his exams, but don't get so worked up. Her words shocked me. Sis, how do you know about my surgery? Only David knew about it. At that, she stumbled over her words, realizing her slip up. Everything clicked in my mind, and my anger surged like a breached dam. Oh, I see. You two have been having an affair for 15 years. That's it. I reached into my bag and scattered photos in front of them, showing them together at various times and places, clearly in an affair. They were shocked, staring at the photos. Since I saw David and my sister at the pancake shop, I had suspected their affair and hired a detective. Ironically, thanks to David, I had saved all my part-time earnings, which I used to hire the detective. The evidence of their affair quickly piled up. Unbeknownst to them, the detective had captured their every move. They looked at me, not expecting their actions to be so thoroughly exposed. I let out a dry laugh and said, "Big mistake thinking you weren't caught. It's shocking enough that the affair has been going on since Ryan's birth. I had a complication during Ryan's delivery, resulting in a hysterectomy. I wanted to give Ryan siblings, but couldn't, and shared this only with David. The fact that my sister knew something even our parents didn't indicated their long-standing affair. Realizing that my sister knew about David being upset when I couldn't have more children meant they had been involved for that long. Indeed, I had felt David changing gradually since Ryan was born. But knowing I had been deceived for 15 years and that he had been wearing a family mask filled me with disgust.
Pathetic, isn't it? Grown adults acting like this. No father should do this. I'll take custody of Ryan. I expect child support and alimony from you, David. And you too, sis,"
I said sharply, and David shrank away. My sister, trying to make excuses, said, "We weren't exactly having an affair. It was just a close bond between in-laws." But her attempts were pitiful. I decided it was time for the final revelation and called someone. "Hello, this is Karen." "Yes, long time no see." My sister froze at these words, blinking rapidly. David, knowing I had no brother, was completely lost at why I would call someone. After explaining the situation over the phone, I told David. Just like I didn't tell my sister about my surgery, she had her secrets too. Apparently, she has a husband who's been on a solo assignment overseas. Smirking, I watched as my sister turned pale and trembled, and David stood there utterly confused. Yes, my sister was married, having met her husband about 5 years ago through an acquaintance. Her husband works in a foreign company, a top-notch elite. Currently overseas on assignment but planning to start his own company soon. I learned about my brother-in-law for the first time when I hired a detective. My sister had a bad relationship with our parents, cutting off contact due to her dropping out of high school and multiple police incidents. Hence, my parents were unaware of her marriage. Of course, I had no idea either, never imagining my sister, whose husband was abroad, was having an affair with my husband. When I confronted her, she denied it, saying they were just close, so I was prepared to play my trump card. I called my sister's husband, and after a long conversation, he was furious. He must have been shocked to learn that, taking advantage of his absence, his wife had an affair with my husband. I just informed him now that my sister and David had been involved for 15 years, and he was speechless. He asked for time to think and prepare for the future, so I detailed our conversation. Of course, he plans to divorce you. David, you might not be liable, but paying up might be good for you. He is a major client of your company, after all. The two, cornered, begged for forgiveness.
"Karen, I'm sorry. I'll end things with David here, please don't sue. Karen, can you talk to this guy? I don't know what to do."
Seeing them in panic, I smiled. They mistook it for mercy and smiled back. But then, I dropped the hammer.
This isn't a situation where a simple apology will do. I don't trust a word from traitors, nor will I help you. You both deserve what's coming.
I left the apartment, leaving them in despair. When I got home, I found several cardboard boxes in the living room and Ryan busily moving them. What's going on with these? Ryan turned around, seemingly surprised. And said, Dad's cheating, right? Unbelievable. I can't study in a house with such a person. I decided to move with you, so I was preparing. I never told Ryan about David's affair. How did you know? I asked, bewildered. Ryan revealed an unexpected truth. A friend from my school works at that pancake shop. She told me. So I knew. Otherwise, I couldn't have supported your mysterious actions. I never imagined this was how it would come out. The part-time worker at the pancake shop was a high school girl, a year older than Ryan. She recognized David, who frequently skipped work to date my sister and even used the shop for business, leaving his business card there once. She contacted Ryan, realizing he was David's son. Ryan knew everything from the start. Why didn't you say something, if you knew? I asked timidly. Ryan replied, I didn't want to upset you. Plus, I promised, right? To get into a good company and make life easier for you. I might be just a powerless kid now, but I'm determined to free you from Dad's spell. He said that in a deliberately cool and exaggerated way. I couldn't help but laugh. That line, isn't it from a character in some popular drama these days? I was worried you were only focused on your studies, but you've been secretly watching it, haven't you? We laughed together, and before David returned, we packed up our essentials and left the house, heading to my parents' place. Within a month, everything with David and my sister was settled. David and I got divorced, and he had to pay a lump sum for Ryan's child support. The amount might vary depending on Ryan's future education, but I didn't want any more involvement with David. David, utterly dejected, signed everything and agreed to all terms without protest. My sister, on the other hand, met a dismal fate. Her husband, having returned from overseas, brought a skilled lawyer and quickly divorced her. This lawyer also helped me with David, making everything smoother. Being a high school dropout and a part-time worker, she had no savings and had even defaulted on taxes. She lied to her ex-husband about working as an office clerk. But now she had to work multiple jobs, struggling to survive. She quickly lost weight, couldn't afford rent, and ended up homeless. David, having to maintain relations with my sister's ex-husband, a client of his company, paid him alimony too, but eventually resigned due to rumors. With the payments to me and Ryan, his savings ran dry, and he seemed destined for a fate similar to my sister's. Nobody sympathized with them, and they were left to lead lonely, miserable lives. My parents were shocked when I suddenly moved back home, but after hearing the story, they welcomed Ryan and me without hesitation. Ryan's desired high school was within cycling distance from our home, so we decided to live there. Ryan got into his first choice high school, but ultimately chose to pursue pastry making in college, even studying abroad in Paris. Years later, he became a skilled pâtissier and told me he was dating his senior from the pancake shop, considering marriage. I couldn't say it because of Dad, but I became a pâtissier because I admired her. You support my dream, right, Mom? Of course, I did. Obviously. Just like the sweet-tooth Ryan, sneaking off to the pancake shop to see your senior. We reminisced about old times and looked forward to his eventual marriage announcement. After all, it's better for children to choose and walk their own paths, with parents simply being their guides. Watching my strong and kind son's back, I prayed for his bright future.